My name is Kyle Dzintars. I am the outreach coordinator for the Counseling Services Center and one of the clinicians there. We're just trying to get some information out to people who might be struggling at this time about some tools that might be useful or just some things to try out. So today's chat will be a little bit about yoga and how, there's a wide range of things that you can use it for. So I think we'll get into that. And then my guest here, because apparently I have a show that has guests, but is Michaela. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Michaela, and I am a mental health counseling student, and I'm a practicum student at the counseling center.
Great. Thanks. And Michaela and I have had some conversations about yoga already. And I know that's one of her passions, tools for herself, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about it. A big part of what drew me to yoga originally was, I think, my own struggles with anxiety. I didn't know how to kind of calm myself down when I needed to. So that was how it initially started. And then I think I found it to be helpful for kind of warding off anxiety before it hits. So it's good for after the fact, in the middle, and then before. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been my journey with it. And I feel like that's, what I value and what I hope you can find useful too. And I don't know what your experience was with finding yoga, but how did you come about into that?
I was kind of thinking about it when you were saying that. And I do remember my first couple yoga classes, I think, but what sticks out to me is the experience of something that was about being healthy and being fit in a physical activity, which I don't have the greatest memories of from gym class. But it was somewhere that met you where you're at, where you weren't expected to all look the same. And again, some sports, they have to do that out of safety or whatever. But it was just about your body today. I had never heard anybody say that, tomorrow it might be different, or yesterday it might have been different. And today is just about your body today. And I was like, oh my God. So I loved that message. I had never heard that from any type of athletic, anything.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's a great point to even start with, because I just think there is this drive to always be improving in some places in the world, or doing your best, or continually growing. And yoga, I feel is kind of just accepting where you're at the moment. It's being as present as possible.
Yes.
No judgment. This is what you can do. This is what it is.
And that's why even, a yogi master, will say it's a practice. So that's what I love about it too, is there's never, there may be a way that somebody who is extremely physically fit or able-bodied does a pose, but that doesn't mean that that's the end goal for you. It's just about, like you said, just being present and being with your body today, not pushing it beyond, but also challenging, maybe a little more than you think you can do.
Yeah. Which is, I think, a good place to kind of find that, I don't know, it's a fine line, right? The acceptance piece of being who you are, what you're able to do. And then knowing that, we're always capable of challenging ourselves. Some days might be harder than others. Some days maybe you don't challenge, you just need to ground. But I think,
and some days you just sit. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. No, that's perfect. That's exactly where I was going with that. Yeah. So even just having those, the options with how you use it. So, I guess, I know we chatted a little bit about this before, but who do you think yoga is useful for in some ways?
Yeah, I think that is one of my biggest passions about trying to bring people yoga, is that it can be for anybody and everybody. Whether you are able-bodied or you have competed competitively in another sport, or anything in between, or if you've never even tried to move your body out of enjoyment for yourself, I think there is something for yoga in you. And if you tried a yoga class and the teacher didn't make you feel that way, I would encourage you to try another one. Or that's why this online thing is kind of cool, because if you've been scared, you can try it in your own home by yourself with the curtains drawn, and maybe start to feel that movement in your body that is we're supposed to move our bodies with joy. But so often that's, unless you're perfect at it, the message is not there. So I think yoga is for everybody. I think it can benefit everybody, whether you're looking at it from just a physical standpoint, like you are a CrossFit athlete and you need to stretch, or like you need a mental change in your life. I think if you like seek it out, it can help you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, oh man, there's so much that you brought up there that I thought was really interesting, because I started thinking about how much of that has like somewhat shifted as we've gone through it. Like we've become somewhat of a culture of like striving and ambition, whereas this is in a different direction of accepting and growing and connecting to yourself in a new way. So I like that it's kind of like it still has some of the basic foundations for like self-care and taking care of yourself and being attentive, but it's almost like slowing it down and just being, I think, as present as possible for that process to even begin to happen. I remember, because I worked at the fitness centers on campus actually, and they always had yoga classes, and I was like, I can't imagine doing yoga in public. Like I'll never do yoga until I found Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube, and I was able to do it in the privacy of my own house. And I think things have been different since then. Yeah. I think I became more comfortable with myself by that being the initial step. And now I've actually attended yoga classes and things that I never imagined I'd be able to do at one point. So I think I like what you'd said, though. It's accessible in different ways to different people. And we all have our limitations, whatever those may be, but it's just kind of knowing where you're starting to be able to, figure out what works for you. Yeah. So any part of yoga practices that you find the most helpful, or that you think that people might toy with a little bit?
I mean, I love having a routine. So like I personally try to do sun salutations in the morning, which you can find all sorts of modifications to, but it doesn't even have to be that difficult, getting up, stretching your arms up, folding forward and doing that 3 times, or even just folding into your lap if you're seated. I actually really love chair yoga because how much are many of us in a desk, and we actually can be like doing warrior seated and all sorts of things. Yep. So I think that's awesome. And I have to remind myself of that too. We all need modifications at times, and sometimes we don't want to let ourselves just use those tools. I know that's been difficult for me in different situations. So I just try to like offer them up anyways, but that's one reason that I just love the chair practices, and I think they're really useful because, like right now I'm stuck on Zoom meetings like different times of the day, and I can still, and it feels awkward and weird. I'm just like, I'm just going to stretch here for a minute. But, it helps me mentally, physically. So I think just finding any type of small snippet, there's like that feeling too, like, oh, I'm going to start doing yoga. Well, I'm going to do it every day, all this time and this time. And I don't think that's the intention behind it. So I think even just finding, if it's something that you're curious about, just finding, like I said, just doing a forward fold, just like learning more about yoga, or trying to be more of service, which is a part of yoga. So just finding what part kind of feels like a natural fit and a path for you, and just sort of like sitting with it and thinking about it is an important piece, and I think can be beneficial for like anyone.
Yeah. I like that too, because I know we touched briefly on the different parts of what yoga practice can actually be, and whether it is those like acts of service, or if it's just being attentive to the breath, breathing, slowing things down, sitting, whether it's taking certain postures. There's a wide range of like variety to how that unfolds. And I think that, to me anyway, the key piece was always like, all right, the judgment part. Because I would sit and then, following a routine or something would be this stretch that I could not do. Like I could not match the person on the TV that I was watching. And there was a lot of that judgment that kind of floods in at those times, but it's just being okay with, okay, that person is there, I am here, that's okay. And I think that was a huge turning point for me in doing yoga, because I just remember that judgment piece. Like I get so frustrated, I'd get up, I would do yoga for like a month and then allowing that to kind of slowly like wind down. And I think being kinder to myself helped a lot. I don't know if you've had similar struggles, or if you had like those kind of hiccups or challenges yourself with getting into yoga or finding it useful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that. I think that's one of the big things that drives my journey as someone trying to, bring yoga to other people, trying, even if there's a pose, whether it's challenging or not, that I'm able to do, just always offering those modifications, doing a whole routine and modifications, maybe just so that's what's visible. And I know for me, it's just being aware, like I do better when I am like watching yoga routines that are from people that do it that way. So kind of just being aware of myself, for me, or whoever, if you're, looking for routines out there, look for something that's accessible or body positive or whatever feels right to you. Whether it's a instructor that, happens to like look like you or whatever, or not, whatever that case is. I think that was what was really important to me and seemed to make it a lot more accessible. And there is, like whole videos and things, body positive yoga, and another one called Yoga for All. And that's their whole basis. So like if somebody's interested, they can definitely look into those two things. And they're just, all about that representation matters kind of idea, where, they find just as much joy and value from yoga as anyone else. Just going back to the point of like anybody, there's people that do yoga with people with TBIs and dementia and all sorts of things. So it's incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that piece of it too, because I mean, to tie this to mental health as well, like you have to find the right fit, right? Like it's the person that you feel the most comfortable with being with, and then who pushes you to be yourself, accept yourself how you are, but then also allows for some growth or challenge or, opportunity to come into it. I think that's really important because, there are so many examples out there that might not vibe with people. It might not be their cup of tea for that yoga practice, but there are a lot of people out there. So I think that's the resource. So I appreciate the plug for those ones as well. But I think especially for one thing that I've always been interested in is this shift that I remember going through kind of mentally of, all right, yoga is supposed to be this relaxing posture. I'm supposed to be calm while I'm doing it. And I remember the moment that something clicked is I was doing one of the, I don't know the posture names very well, but like the more like restricted kind of like confined postures where you're like very twisted and balancing. And I remember doing that and being like, what? This is the opposite of stress relief. Like I'm so stressed in this posture. And then the relief that you feel afterwards. And that was so great because you're like, okay, I can do something challenging. I was able to get through it. And then I felt so good and relieved after the fact. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, I get yoga. I get it. So I thought that was really helpful. But
I love that. I do a lot of like pep talks with like kids about balancing poses, and I try to and even if standing is not something that's accessible to you, you could balance just by feeling the parts of you that are grounded. Maybe you can lift one leg or even just tilting forward in a chair. But if I'm doing like tree, or I think you're talking about eagle, with little kids, I tell them like if they have a big test or if they've got like monkey mind, they just cannot, it's like bing, 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 bing. Try to balance or try to get upside down, which they love anyways. But it's hard to focus on a balancing pose and focus on the stuff that we were thinking about before and balance. So otherwise you're just, like you said, you're just getting more frustrated. And then sometimes it clicks and you're like, oh, okay, got the balance, forgot about that stuff for a second.
Yep.
So I love balancing poses, anything like that. And they're great for when you're feeling a little swirly or, like before you've got something going on. So I think that's very accurate what you said.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of like symbolism that gets wrapped up in some of it too, because the idea of things being balanced and feeling like you can balance yourself, whatever that means, because it does mean different things for different people. But I do think that that's a cool thing that it overlaps with this. There is a lot of like symbolism that comes out of the process. So. Awesome. I think So if I'm exploring this fully, is there like a favorite posture that you have? One that you feel like you would say like, I like this one the best?
I really do like inversions, which are like when your heart is above your head. So we've got some symbolism there
Mhm.
too. And there are people that believe, great to do if you want to tune in more to your emotions than your head and want to explore like a decision making using your heart versus your head. But they're great for any number of reasons. And you can be totally upside down in a headstand if you want, or you could, just be like kneeling on the floor and sort of like tip your body forward a little bit so you're upside down. Um, and I love that. It's I was saying earlier too, like if I feel some type of panic in my body setting in, or like I'll use that. Even just like a forward fold is a would be a type of inversion, and you can do that seated, just bending forward into your lap. You could have a pillow in your lap, and just stack it if you're not feeling flexible. So it's just like doable anywhere. And I did used to very often get up in my office and like come into a forward fold, so people didn't think that was abnormal. But I find that very, very, very helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, that's cool. I ask because I think I've found over practicing yoga that different postures have been useful at different times for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm drawn to ones, and I know symbolism wise, of like open. So like
Mm-hmm.
ones that demand having kind of like your arms put out, or like reaching forward, or like peaceful warrior. That's the one I know because I like that one. But that openness, there's something that's like inviting to that, but it's also like opening up for like whatever needs to happen in the moment, which I think again goes back to mental health. It's knowing kind of like what you are learning about yourself as you're in those experiences.
That's what I was thinking as you were saying that is, if that is something that you find interesting or you're curious about learning about yourself, you can go very deep into what type of poses feel right for your body. I love heart openers as well. And, design whole routines for yourself around that, or, you know, like I had teenage girls that would do like a self-portrait and we would do heart openers, and just that type of exploration. You can, take your creativity all type of ways with it. And that's what I love about it as well. Just thinking about what I'm drawn to and bringing in, why that's interesting right now. Even as I was talking about inversions, I was like, how is that playing out right now? So it's incredible for self-exploration, like of
Mm,
any kind, I think.
definitely, yes. And I know we had mentioned this, and I wanted to hit on this kind of before we start to wrap up, but like the idea of we're going through this really tough situation. It's sometimes hard to feel grounded. And then when we're not grounded, where things feel like unstable or uncertain, sometimes it's hard to sit with the emotional weight of what we're going through. So I think for a lot of people, it's kind of seeking ways out of that, whether it's like finding distractions so they don't have to think about anything, whether it's like, I don't know, just finding all of those things that we kind of like pull in or that push us out of ourselves. Where I think yoga, to me anyway, has been really helpful at this time because it just allows me to feel like, okay, I can sit with myself and I can be okay with that. No matter what arises, no matter what I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
it's temporary, but I can sit with it. So that's been something that I feel like I at least want to communicate to people is if you're struggling to do that, to feel like you can sit with your thoughts and your feelings and be okay, this might be a good way, at least to introduce some of that, where you have some safety and like self-nurturance. You're taking care of your physical body.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I think what yoga can be for people is, we hear a lot of time the phrase like holding space for others, and a lot of us are very, very good at that. And that can be one of the ideas of yoga for me, is holding that space for yourself. And not very many of us are used to letting those body sensations of perhaps anxiety or grief right now that a lot of us are feeling, or we might not know. I mean, we might not have the words, we might just not have a clue, but we're feeling like a chest or a stomach problem. Just kind of like recognizing that and bringing a little bit of awareness to it, that I think is very valuable. Just validating yourself. A lot of us most of us are feeling these things right now. But giving yourself the space to explore it, knowing that it doesn't have to be permanent, like you said, just because we're needing to seek out some coping skills right now, that's not a problem or a bad thing. It's a good thing, perhaps, if you want to look at it that way, that people are really by necessity, having to sit with themselves and those emotional feelings that we might have dealt with in other ways that we can't get to right now. So I think it's a great opportunity for that. And that's one thing that yoga is surely meant for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Because I do think like there's a difference right now of feeling somewhat isolated from others, and just the weight of, really truly what it means to be with yourself, no matter what that is. So like you said, there's times for coping strategies, there's times for distraction, and then there's times to know that you can be okay with what's going on internally. So I liked your summary there for just even identifying what we feel physically and being okay with that, like labeling it, understanding it a little bit differently.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, that's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how much you heard, but I was just kind of saying, like, I think it's useful for us to find what we feel and then to develop even an understanding of it. It's almost like mapping what we feel and then how we connect it to language. So like, is there a word that describes that feeling? Is it connected to something else that we know or something that we're exploring?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I do. A lot of the yoga that I do is with kids. And so name a feeling, mad. Show me a yoga pose that like means mad, or you would do when you're mad. Well, okay, how can you move your body out of that pose into a different pose that means happy, or that you would do when you're happy? And then it's obviously great to watch what they do, but then just that like connection there, like we do have some control over our reactions, and so, to some extent our feelings. Yes, they're going to hit us, and that is what it is, but what can we do, to change that, move a muscle, change a thought kind of idea.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I love the idea of kind of taking a posture to represent a feeling and then shifting to another one, because you're literally physically having to shift. Like it alters the way that you're feeling and then allowing yourself to feel, which is really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's the creativity that you can do. And we tend to say with kids, but you could do that with grown-ups in a heartbeat if we were open to being playful. And that's what drew me to kids yoga in the first place, is to try to get myself a little more playful and creative. But absolutely, if you're mad, like how would you hold your body when you're mad? And just creating that muscle memory of like the feeling of anger and moving your body out of it, it's very powerful.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's true. Like there is an element of play involved, and sometimes it's hard as we get older to carry that on. But I think for college students, especially struggling with maybe adjusting to online classes, maybe having to go back home, maybe struggling because they just don't know what to make of all of this, it is a good time to have a little bit of play involved in that. It doesn't have to always be so serious, because otherwise we're burning ourselves out, we're getting overwhelmed. So embracing like the flexibility piece of this, like you just move how you need to move and you be how you have to be.
Oh yeah. And if you're struggling with like a yoga routine and that childlike side of it speaks to you, pick off a child's book off your shelf if you have them. What pose would that dinosaur do? What pose would that dinosaur do? Just moving your body. And it sounds silly, but like it's just getting your brain out of that space and into a space of movement and joy can be so beneficial. And if that, that side of it speaks to you for some reason, some people really like those very physical, athletic that side of yoga, those routines, and those are wonderful and valid for people, and they get their energy from that side of it. But you know, if we're saying this and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, embrace that too. There's a whole side there as well.
Definitely, yes. So I think even just to wrap up, there are a lot of resources that are kind of out there already. I can't plug Yoga with Adrienne enough just because I think there's so much variety to her work. Just there are some times where it's nice and calm and there's poses that are very slow moving. There's other times where it's a little more aerobic or just kind of like working up a sweat. And then there's even just some meditations in there. So I think there's a lot of stuff that people can choose from when it comes to that stuff. So I'll include links wherever this is going to be posted, I think on YouTube, for that. And then some of the ones that you mentioned as well. Are there any other resources that you'd like to like call attention to or that you know of?
I do know that a couple apps, I believe, are, you know, giving like free subscriptions or free trials, Yoga International and Peloton, and they have some yoga on there. Peloton, pretty competitive, so it's that side, that athletic side, but free resources. So yeah, you will link everyone to those.
Yes, I will. Great. And I know that the fitness center actually is working on, I think they're doing it, live streaming yoga classes with Stephen York, who does mindfulness yoga practice on campus. So if you are interested in just doing it in your own space, on your own time, I would say tune in there. Those resources are probably available on the fitness center website, but again, I'll link to it. But yeah, other than that, I mean, anything else that we didn't hit on that you'd like to say or?
No, I just hope that if anything in you is saying like, I really do want to give this a try, but I'm afraid for, whatever reason, explore that a little bit. And I hope that you're able to give it a try because it can be like life-changing.
Awesome. Yes, I will second that. As someone who was hesitant and skeptical for a long time, I found it to be, I mentioned to Michaela before, the two things that are getting me through are going for runs and yoga. Like that has been the most grounding stuff for me right now. So I think, especially if you're on your journey to it, like accept where you're at. It might not be an immediate hit and you're like all in, but it might be something that just gets you through a rough patch. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for chatting and being a part of this as we pull it together. So I appreciate your passion for yoga and your interest.
Thank you.
So.
Thanks for spreading the word.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care and I'll see you in the next one, whatever this is. I don't know what this is.